Okay, we know there's a tribulation period of 7 years prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. The question before us is, when will the time of the two witnesses' ministry occur within the tribulation period 7 years? And the answer to this question also helps demonstrate why the rapture must be pre-trib. The 7-year trib period comes from the prophecy of the 70 weeks in Daniel chapter 9, where each week is a time period of 7 years. The tribulation period is the last or the 70th week of that prophecy. This prophetic week is divided into two halves, each 3.5 years long, according to Daniel 9:27. Now, the length of time that the two witnesses prophesy is clear from Revelation 11, verse 3. And I will grant authority to my two witnesses, and they will prophesy for 1260 days, clothed in sackcloth. The sameness of half the tribulation period and the ministry time span of the two witnesses is no coincidence. And this 1260 days of ministry is aligned with the first half, not the second half, as I'll point out in this video. You will see how the 1260 days of the two witnesses' ministry cannot be located time-wise in the second half of the tribulation period. We also know a time times and half a time, or 1260 days, is the time of the reign of the Antichrist. A time times and half a time, or 42 months. He will speak out against the Most High and wear down the saints of the Highest One, and he will intend to make alterations in times and in law, and they will be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. Daniel 7:25. There was given him a mouth speaking arrogant words and blasphemies, and authority to act for 42 months was given to him. Revelation 13:5. The Antichrist's reign is exactly 1260 days, not a day more nor a day less. He enters the temple of God, and he puts a stop to Jewish worship sacrifices and demands to be worshipped as God, who opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, displaying himself as being God. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. We know from Daniel that this event occurs in the exact center of the tribulation period, 7 years. But in the middle of the week he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering, and on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate. Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. Please carefully note that the Antichrist will continue his reign until he is destroyed. Even unto a complete destruction, one that is decreed is poured out on the one who makes desolate. Daniel 9:27. This can only mean that Antichrist, whom we have seen reign for 42 months, is destroyed according to God's decree at the 1260th day of his reign, not one day more or less. So we know the Antichrist is destroyed after reigning exactly 1260 days. So what's that got to do with the time of the ministry of the two witnesses? Well, Revelation 11:7 says, when they have finished their testimony, the beast that comes up out of the abyss will make war with them and overcome them and kill them. Revelation 11:9 then says, but after the 3.5 days, the breath of life from God came into them, and they stood on their feet, and great fear fell upon those who were watching them. Revelation 11:11. So let's assume that the ministry of the two witnesses is aligned with the second half of the tribulation. At the tribulation period's midpoint, the Antichrist commits the abomination of desolation. That same day, the ministry of the two witnesses begins, and they minister for the specified 1260 days, which is also the length of the Antichrist's reign. Then, on the final day of the Antichrist's reign, he kills the two witnesses. But Jesus comes back right then also, and has the Antichrist and false prophet thrown into the lake of fire. Despite this world-shaking event of the second coming, the world nonetheless watches the bodies of the two witnesses for 3.5 more days, even while Jesus is judging the nations and setting up his kingdom. Still following that time sequence, after those 3.5 extra days, the bodies rise to life again, and there's a great earthquake. Then the third woe occurs. The next angel, the one with the seventh trumpet, blows his horn, And that's not even counting the 7 bowls of wrath that additionally follow after the 7th trumpet. All this happening 3.5 days after the second coming. Does anybody besides me see a problem with this? Now listen, the 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 bowls all are completed before the second coming. The time of the 2 witnesses' ministry cannot be in the second half of the tribulation period. It doesn't work. The world rejoices and gloats over the death of these 2 men of God and gives gifts to one another during those 3.5 days, something that would have to be happening while Jesus has already returned to earth. Does anyone seriously expect that Jesus, after having returned to earth, would allow that? I don't think so. Now, when you see the impossibility of the time of the 2 witnesses' ministry being in the second half, requiring that it be in the first half, you can see the evidence for the rapture showing clearly as pre-trib. Think about it for a moment. The Church of Jesus Christ is commanded to be Jesus' witnesses. Why would God put into operation these 2 spectacular witnesses to bear witness of Jesus Christ if the church were still on earth to do the work as it's been given for the past 2,000 years? With the pre-trib rapture happening, billions of people will suddenly have no one to tell them about Jesus. The church will be gone. However, with the time of the 2 witnesses' ministry beginning on day 1 of the tribulation, people will be hearing about Jesus despite the disappearance of Christians in the rapture. Why would God now use 2 Jewish witnesses doing the miracles of Moses and Elijah and 144,000 Jewish men to share the gospel unless it were necessary because the church is gone? At the end of their ministry on day 1260, the Antichrist goes into the temple of God and commits the abomination of desolation. Then the words of Jesus become terribly clear. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains. Matthew 24, verses 15 through 16. The Antichrist slays the 2 witnesses, and the tribulation period now begins its second half. And they will be given into his hand for a time, times and half a time. Daniel 7, verse 25. There was given to him a mouth speaking arrogant words and blasphemies, and authority to act for 42 months was given to him. Revelation 13:5. It was also given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority over every tribe and people and tongue and nation was given to him. Revelation 13:7. It is this supreme reign of his during the second half that shows why all of the evangelism must take place in the tribulation period's first half, both that of the 2 witnesses and that of the 144,000 Israelites. Therefore, the time of the 2 witnesses can be none other than during the first half of the tribulation period, with the rapture preceding it. Now, as a final note, Malachi chapter 4, verses 5 and 6, the last 2 verses in the Old Testament, declare Elijah comes before the day of the Lord, which we know is the tribulation. Before, not during, but before. Just something to think about. So I hope you find this teaching helpful and encouraging. Please like, share, and subscribe, and let us comfort and encourage one another as that day of our seeing Jesus draws near. And as always, thanks for watching.